Your healing journey is performative bullshit, and you know it. You're not healing. You're curating content about healing, and there's a difference. Healing, the word of our generation. Everyone's on a healing journey. Everyone's doing the work. Everyone's processing their trauma in public with carefully filtered photos and captions full of therapy speak that sound profound but mean nothing. And you're eating it up, posting about your breakthrough, your growth, your journey, using words like boundaries and triggers and inner child like they're accessories you picked up at a wellness retreat, performing vulnerability for an audience that mistakes oversharing for authenticity. But it's not healing, it's theatre, and you're the star of a one-person show called Look How Self-Aware I Am. Real healing happens in private, in therapy rooms, in difficult conversations, in the messy, unglamorous work of actually changing patterns and behaviours. Real healing is boring, it's repetitive, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back for months or years with no dramatic breakthroughs to post about. Real healing doesn't photograph well, so you don't do it, you perform it instead. Because performing healing gets you something real, healing doesn't. Attention, validation, comments saying you're so brave and thank you for sharing, and this really resonated with me. And that attention feels good, feels like progress, feels like you're doing something. But you're not. You're documenting something. And documentation isn't the same as transformation. Talking about the work isn't doing the work, and you know this. Deep down, underneath all the posts and stories and carefully crafted vulnerability, you know you're performing. One wise soul said that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your impediment is that you're talking about healing instead of actually healing. And the talking has become the impediment. Because every time you post about it, you get a hit of validation that tricks your brain into thinking you've accomplished something. But you haven't. You've just announced your intentions. And announcing intentions is where most people stop, because the announcement gets the reward, the likes, the comments, the feeling of being seen. And that's what you're actually after, isn't it? Not healing. Being seen. Being witnessed. Being validated for your pain. Because your pain is the most interesting thing about you, and you're terrified that if you actually heal, you'll become boring. So you don't heal. You perform healing. You stay stuck in the same patterns whilst posting about how much you're growing. You talk about setting boundaries whilst letting the same people cross them. You post about cutting off toxic people whilst still texting them at 2 a.m. You caption photos with profound insights about self-love whilst hating yourself in private. It's all performance, and everyone can see it except you. Or maybe you can see it too. Maybe you know exactly what you're doing, and you're doing it anyway because the performance gets you something the real work doesn't. Community. Belonging. A sense that you're part of something. The healing community. The therapy speak crowd. The people who understand trauma and triggers and emotional regulation. You're fluent in the language now. You know all the right words, all the right phrases. But knowing the language isn't the same as doing the work, and you've mistaken vocabulary for progress. Another philosopher wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. You're imagining healing, imagining growth, imagining transformation, and that imagination, that performance, it's preventing the actual thing from happening because you're getting the reward without doing the work and your brain can't tell the difference. So here's the test. Stop posting about it, stop talking about it, stop announcing every insight and breakthrough and moment of growth. Just do the actual work in private and see what happens. See if you can grow without an audience. See if you can heal without validation. See if you can change patterns without documenting the process. See if the healing is still interesting to you when no one's watching. It won't be, because it's not about healing, it's about being seen healing. And those are completely different things. Because let's be honest about what your healing journey actually looks like. You had something difficult happen, something that hurt, something that maybe was genuinely traumatic, and instead of processing it privately, you turned it into content. You wrote the caption, you chose the photo, You crafted the vulnerability in a way that was just raw, enough to seem authentic, but polished enough to get engagement. You posted it. You watched the likes roll in. You read the comments. You felt seen. And that felt better than actually dealing with the pain. So you did it again and again. And now your entire identity is wrapped up in being someone who's healing, someone who's on a journey, someone who's doing the work. But you're not doing the work. You're talking about doing the work. And the talking has become a substitute for the doing. Here's what actual healing looks like. It's unglamorous. It's sitting in a therapist's office saying the same things you said last week because patterns don't change overnight. It's having the same argument with your partner, but this time catching yourself mid-spiral and actually doing something different. It's noticing a trigger and not reacting to it, even though every cell in your body wants to. It's small. It's incremental. It's so boring you wouldn't dare post about it because it would get 12 likes and no comments. So you don't do it. You do the performative version instead, the version that photographs well. You post about cutting off your toxic family, while still going to Christmas dinner and complaining about it. You post about knowing your worth while staying in relationships that prove you don't. You post about self-care whilst ignoring every signal your body sends that something's wrong. You've learned the language of therapy without doing any of the therapy, and you think that's the same thing. It's not. Because therapy speak has become a way to avoid accountability. You don't lie, you were triggered into a trauma response. You're not lazy, you're dealing with executive dysfunction. You're not selfish, you're prioritizing your healing. You're not difficult, you're setting boundaries. And some of that might be true, but most of it is just rebranding bad behavior with clinical language so you don't have to feel bad about it, so you don't have to change, so you can keep doing exactly what you've always done whilst calling it healing. That's not growth, that's justification. And Instagram has given you a community of people who will validate your justifications because they're doing the same thing. Everyone's healing, everyone's on a journey, everyone's doing the work, and no one's actually changing anything. One bloke said the mind is its own place and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. You've made a heaven of your hell by calling it a healing journey. You've romanticized your pain, made it meaningful, made it your identity, made it the thing people know you for. And now you're stuck. Because if you actually heal, what will you post about? Who will you be without your trauma? What will make you interesting if you're no longer broken? So you stay broken, you stay wounded, you stay on your journey, because the journey gets you something the destination doesn't, attention, and you've become addicted to it. Here's the uncomfortable bit. Your trauma isn't special. Everyone's been hurt. Everyone's carrying something. Everyone's got a story about the thing that broke them, and most people are quietly dealing with it without turning it into content. They're going to therapy and not posting about it. They're setting boundaries and not announcing them. They're growing and changing and healing, and the only people who know are the people close enough to witness it. Not because they're private people, but because they understand that real transformation doesn't require an audience. But you need the audience, because without the audience, the healing feels pointless. What's the point of growth if no one sees it? What's the point of change if you can't document it? What's the point of healing if you can't perform it? And that question reveals everything, because healing is the point, not the performance of it, not the documentation of it, not the validation you get from it, just the actual being better, being healthier, being less controlled by your past. But that's not enough for you. Being better in private doesn't count. You need it witnessed. You need it validated. You need proof that it's happening. Because if a tree falls in the forest and no one posts about it, did it really fall? So you keep posting, keep performing, keep calling it healing. And the actual healing, the real uncomfortable transformation that happens when you stop talking and start doing, that never happens. Because you're too busy curating the performance to do the actual work. And everyone can see it. Everyone can see that you're still stuck, that you're still in the same patterns, that you post about boundaries and then let people walk all over you, that you talk about self-love and then date people who treat you terribly, that you claim you're healing, but you're still triggered by the same things you were triggered by 2 years ago. That everyone can see it except you. Or maybe you can see it. Maybe you know exactly what you're doing, and you're hoping if you perform it convincingly enough, it'll become real. It won't. Performance doesn't become reality just because you believe in it, and healing doesn't happen just because you talk about it. So here's the prescription. Delete the posts, all of them. The ones about your trauma, your healing, your journey, your growth. Delete them. Not because you should be ashamed, because they're keeping you stuck. Stop talking about healing and start actually doing it, in private, with a professional, in the unglamorous, repetitive, boring work of actually changing your patterns. Stop announcing your breakthroughs and just have them. Stop performing vulnerability and just be vulnerable with people who've earned it. Mock and see what happens. See if you can heal without an audience. See if you can grow without validation. See if transformation is still worth pursuing when it's not content. If it is, you'll do the work. If it isn't, you never wanted to heal. You just wanted to perform healing. And those are completely different things. Because here's the truth you're avoiding. Your healing journey isn't a journey, it's a performance. And the performance is preventing the journey. Because every time you post about growth, you trick your brain into thinking you've grown. Every time you announce a boundary, you feel like you've set one. Every time you talk about change, you feel like you've changed. But you haven't. You've just announced it, and announcements aren't actions, and your brain doesn't know the difference, so you get the reward without doing the work, and you stay exactly where you are. Stuck. Wounded. On a journey that never ends because it was never real to begin with. Your healing journey is performative bullshit, and you know it. You've always known it. You just hoped if you performed it convincingly enough, everyone else would believe it. And they might. But your nervous system doesn't believe it. Your patterns don't believe it. Your relationships don't believe it. Because they're exactly the same as they were before you started your healing journey. Before you learned the language. Before you started posting. You're the same person with better vocabulary. And vocabulary doesn't heal trauma. Action does. So stop talking, stop posting, stop performing, and do the actual unglamorous, boring, repetitive work of healing. Not for an audience, not for validation, not for proof that you're doing something. Just for you, just to be better, just to be less controlled by your past and more present in your actual life. That's healing. And it doesn't need a caption. It doesn't need a photo. It doesn't need an audience. It just needs you to stop performing and start doing. But you won't. Not yet, because the performance is too rewarding, and the actual work is too hard, and the audience is too validating, and your identity is too wrapped up in being someone who's healing to actually heal and become someone else. So you'll keep posting, keep performing, keep calling it a journey, and in 5 years you'll still be in the same place talking about how much you've grown whilst your patterns prove you haven't. And that's fine. That's your choice. Just stop calling it healing. Call it what it is. Performance, content. A way to get attention for pain without actually dealing with the pain. Your healing journey is performative bullshit, and you know it. The question is whether you're brave enough to stop performing and start actually healing, or whether the performance is all you've got. So tell me, when was the last time you did healing work without posting about it? Comment below. Prove me wrong. I'm waiting. Overthinking Department, where we call theatre, open 24/7.